Teaching art or teaching to think like an artist? That is a question that we will answer by the end of this lesson. I am your facilitator for today, G. Mariel L. Gaputan. Let us start by giving some background on the reference that I used for this topic. Let's start. The reference that I got for this topic is from a Tedx Columbus event wherein there's a speaker named Cindy Foley. Cindy Foley is the Executive Assistant Director and Director of Learning and Experience at the Columbus Museum of Art. She is also an art educator. She is the person who first discussed about teaching art or teaching to think like an artist. Let us start with this relevant picture. If you have read the book The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, you should be familiar with this image. According to the story, the boy asked the adults if they fear of their drawing, and the adults replied that why would they fear if they see a hat in his drawing? But then, according to the boy, it is not a hat. Instead, it is a picture of a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. What do you think about the story? The situation that the boy was in. If you were in that, what would you think? Perhaps you would also think that it is a hat. And by that, we can see the contrast between the outlook of the children and the adults. As we go along our discussion, please bear this part of the story of The Little Prince in mind so that you can look back and reflect on our topic for today. Cindy Foley asked about what is wrong in art education, and she identified that art education is impacted by the standards of testing culture, where teachers are testing their learners on their learnings, and many do this with concrete standards. And when we mean concrete, we focus on things that are concrete, such as the history of art and the elements of art, which are less flexible, in which we also tried to question what is really art's critical value, what is our intention of teaching art for the students. When we speak of art, we always say creativity. And we are right, because creativity is something that is considered as the #1 need for students, for people to succeed, to have economic growth, and for general happiness. In fact, quality art education can develop the capacity to think creatively and capacity to make connections. So indeed, creativity is really related to art, but there is something shocking about this. There is a disconnect of creativity and art education. The cliché notions of art in our society makes it hard for us to teach for creativity. And these cliché notions are also true in our culture here in the Philippines, where artists are the ones who draw realistically. And I, for one, also experienced that, being so shy in BS architecture because I cannot draw. Compared to my classmates who can really draw realistically. And Cindy Foley tells us that fostering these cliché notions, praising students for perhaps about their drawing being realistically drawn, is what makes this teaching for creativity hard. This is an example of what we have discussed a while ago. Did you also have this experience? And unknowingly, this affects us. The way we think about creativity. What more to children if they have experience like that? It indirectly tells the children that their drawing is useless because they didn't draw realistically. Just like our example from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, that boy, which eventually grew to be a man that stopped thinking out of the box, that stopped generating ideas. What then should be our approach as teachers? In here, we are reminded by Cindy Foley to teach for creativity. And how do we teach for creativity? We teach for creativity by embodying the habits that artists enjoy. What are these? What do you think? Pause this video first and think about it. First is comfort with ambiguity. Ambiguity is considered as the number one obstacle for persons to be creative because they do not know something, they do not know about something. And I, for one, experienced that because in the first session of our Visual Technique 1 in BS Architecture, we were told to draw still life, a lamp in the center, and we choose our angles and we draw the lamp. I do not know what to do, honestly speaking. And I panicked because I was not comfortable with ambiguity. And the truth is, we all struggle. We all experience that. And as future educators, we must remember that we must instill in our students to be comfortable with not knowing, because it is an opportunity to learn something new and to explore some things that were not explored by us. And just like artists, we must remind them that ambiguity is part of the process, and we have just to accept it that we don't and know something about something. And we can do that by allowing students to be actively participated in activities that are non-threatening, activities that do not pressure them, instead activities that would help them make it through the ambiguity stage. And for children, this is best when they are at play. The next thing in continuation with the first habit is idea generation, which is directly associated with the comfort of ambiguity. In my experience in BS Architecture, I would always question why would the professors won't teach us how to draw, instead allow us to commit mistakes. And now I understood that this is part of the process too. That in our mistakes, the way we plan with spaces, the trial and errors, all contribute to generating an idea. And for children, generating an idea that comes from them is very vital. And here we have an analogy of the Lego kit in the instruction manual. It is not the creativity, but the bucket of Legos and the potential for ideas within. Since Legos are considered as another medium in which they can manifest their idea. And what we can do as teachers is to facilitate how they generate their idea and not become the master builders in the classroom. As featured art educators, we are not to tell them what to do because we are not teaching for creativity in that way. We may introduce a topic, but make room for activities in which they will be the ones to generate their ideas. And for children, for the learners, the little learners, play is something really critical. When they play, they can generate ideas, or when they play with their ideas, they can generate it into something they can use for their output. They are to learn from their experiences. And in relation to some theories that we learned, we can associate this with discovery learning and inquiry-based learning. And lastly, transdisciplinary research, in which the research that serves their curiosity allow them to combine their ideas to satisfy their curiosity, for them to become more motivated in applying those ideas. Transdisciplinary exceeds the boundaries of fields. However, instead, it breaks these boundaries to form a collated idea. The future of education, according to Cindy Foley, is not about discrete disciplines, where I think she meant that not compartmentalized. Where math is different from science and science is different from art, instead, we use these fields together to create and generate an idea. Not only for painting, not only for photography and other forms of art. She reminds us that careers other than fine arts, interior designing, architecture, which we usually associate with arts, is also practicing creativity. And one thing that we can really instill to the students is that creativity is not only limited to the usual notions of art. Instead, creativity is something that they can apply in other areas of their life, in all areas of their life, for them to thrive in the society, for them to thrive and be useful and purposeful citizens. We are then reminded to not kill the ideas. In the future of education, she reminds us also that ideas are king and curiosity reigns because curiosity and ideas lead the learning. It is where children or learners learn the most when they are creative with what they have generated with their ideas. And now we can finally answer the question, teaching art or teaching to think like an artist? Now think about the applications of these ideas. What can we do to better art education in our own experiences in the future? As let us choose teaching to think like an artist. Teach for creativity. Thank you so much, and I hope that you have learned something about how to teach for creativity, to strive to teach children how to think like an artist, not only for the subjects, but also for life.